Welcome to Lento English. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
One introduction. President Trump is very unhappy. He is angry with a large news company. This company is called the BBC. The BBC is from the United Kingdom. President Trump says he will take legal action against them. He is threatening to sue the BBC for a very large sum of money. He wants $1 billion. This big problem is about a television show. The BBC produced this show. President Trump believes the show was unfair. He says it presented him in a bad way. He feels that the show caused him harm, both financially and to his reputation. This story is important for several reasons. It helps us understand the relationship between powerful leaders and news organizations. It also shows how legal challenges can be used in such situations. President Trump has a history of disagreeing with news coverage. He has often used legal threats when he does not like what media companies report about him. The specific TV show in question aired more than 1 year ago. It focused on President Trump. The show included parts of a speech he gave. This speech happened on January 6. President Trump's legal team claims that the BBC edited his speech poorly. They say the show made it seem like he was telling people to fight like hell at the U.S. Capitol. The complaint states that the editing was not honest. It was, they say, defamatory. This legal threat is a significant event. It highlights the tension that can exist between political leaders and the media. The BBC is a well-known global news organization. President Trump is a prominent figure. Their conflict is now public. People are watching to see how this situation will develop. It represents a story about the media, about lawsuits, and about a powerful leader's actions. 2. The TV show. The BBC is a very famous news company from the United Kingdom. It makes many television programs. One of these programs is called Panorama. Panorama is a well-known show. It often tells important stories through documentaries. For many years, people in the UK have watched Panorama to understand different topics. The show is known for its serious and detailed reporting. It tries to show facts and different sides of a story. Because of this, many people trust what they see on Panorama. More than 1 year ago, Panorama showed a special episode. This episode was about President Trump. It was a very important time for politics. The show was broadcast just 1 week before the 2024 United States presidential election. This election was scheduled for November 5th. The timing of the show was very close to this big event. Many people were watching the news and political programs carefully at that time. The episode's broadcast date made it a significant event in the news cycle. The Panorama episode focused on a speech President Trump gave. This speech happened on January 6th. It took place in Washington, D.C., the capital city of the United States. On that specific day, a large number of people gathered in the city. The TV show used different parts of President Trump's speech from that event. It carefully selected and put these parts together for the episode. The show's aim was to present a narrative using his own words spoken on January 6th. The program used specific comments from his speech. It then showed these comments to its viewers. The way the show edited and presented these comments was a key part of the episode. It made it sound like President Trump was telling his supporters to fight like hell. The episode showed this phrase as something he said to the crowd. This particular part of the show became a very important point in the story it was telling. It highlighted his words from the January 6th event for a wide audience. This specific episode of Panorama quickly became widely known. It created a lot of discussion and many different opinions among viewers and the public. Some people watched it and interpreted it one way, while others had a different view. The show brought President Trump's speech from January 6th back into public attention. It made many people think deeply about what he said and what events unfolded on that day. The BBC's Panorama episode was a broadcast that had a significant impact for various reasons. 3. The big problem. A lawyer for President Trump made a serious complaint about the BBC's TV show. The lawyer said that the BBC edited a speech by President Trump in a very bad way. This speech was given by President Trump. The lawyer claimed the show made it look like President Trump was telling people to fight like hell at the U.S. Capitol. The lawyer explained that the BBC took parts of President Trump's comments and put them together. But the lawyer said they did not put them together in an honest way. The lawyer claimed this editing changed the real meaning of President Trump's words. It made it seem like he was encouraging his supporters to act violently at the Capitol building. This happened just hours before an event there. The main problem, according to President Trump's lawyer, was how the show presented the speech. The lawyer said the BBC's editing was not truthful. It was designed to make President Trump look bad. This kind of reporting, when not true and hurting someone's good name, is called defamatory. The lawyer said the BBC made defamatory statements that were harmful to President Trump. The legal letter from President Trump's team said the broadcast caused him great damage. It hurt his finances and his good name. They argued that the show's editing gave a false picture to people who watched it. This false picture was not fair. It showed President Trump in a way that was not correct. The lawyer's complaint stated that the BBC stitched together different parts of the speech. This created a message that was not what President Trump truly said. The lawyer stressed this was a serious accusation about how a big news company used a powerful leader's words. This was a big problem because it changed the truth of the speech. The legal team believes the BBC did not show the full story. Instead, they created a story through their editing choices. This story, the lawyer claimed, was not honest. It made President Trump appear to be asking people to fight at the Capitol. This was a central part of the complaint. The lawyer said such actions were wrong and caused harm. The complaint specifically said the editing was made to create a negative image of President Trump. The lawyer also said that the BBC's broadcast may have broken a law in Florida. This was mentioned even though the BBC's main TV and streaming services are not usually available in the United States. The legal team wants to prove that the editing was intentionally misleading. They believe the BBC knew the editing was false but still decided to broadcast it. 4. A big number. President Trump's lawyers sent a strong letter to the BBC. This letter made a serious legal threat. It said that the BBC's TV show, Panorama, caused great damage to President Trump. The lawyers claim the show hurt his finances and his good name very badly. They used the words overwhelming financial and reputational harm to describe this damage. This means President Trump believes he lost money and that his public image was badly affected by what the show broadcast. Because of this big harm, President Trump's team asked for a very large amount of money. The demand in the legal letter was for $1 billion. This is a huge sum of money. To give you an idea, 1 billion is 1,000 million. It is a number with 9 zeros after the 1 billion. This extremely high number shows how serious President Trump is about his complaint against the BBC. He believes the damage was very significant. The legal letter also talked about a law in Florida, one of the states in the U.S. It said that the BBC might have broken a law in that specific U.S. state. This is an important part of the legal threat because it suggests a place where a lawsuit could start. However, there is a big question about this claim. The BBC's TV show, Panorama, is generally not available for people in the United States. Its main way to watch programs online, called BBC iPlayer, and its main TV channel, BBC One, do not work in the US. This means most people in Florida could not easily watch the show on these official platforms. So, the claim about breaking Florida law is interesting and complex. It raises questions about how the show could cause harm in Florida if people there could not see it directly. The lawyers for President Trump believe the show was shared in other ways, through different online places. This is how they argue that people in the U.S., including those in Florida, could have seen it and been affected. This part of the case involves rules about where a legal case can happen. This is called jurisdiction. Even if a show is made in one country, a lawsuit can sometimes happen in another. This depends on where the harm happened and where the show was seen. The legal team for President Trump is trying to use these rules to bring their case forward. The demand for $1 billion is a very big number in this legal fight. 5, not the first time. President Trump's threat against the BBC is not a new thing. He has a long history of doing this. For many years, he has used legal threats and lawsuits. He does this to news companies. He acts when he does not like what they say about him. This is part of a bigger plan. It is a campaign. This campaign tries to make news companies careful. It makes them think about how they cover President Trump. He wants them to be on their toes. Often, his lawyers send letters. These letters threaten legal action. Many times, these threats do not become real lawsuits, but they still have an effect. Journalists sometimes feel scared. They might be more careful about what they write or say. This is called a chilling effect. However, President Trump has also started real lawsuits. He has followed through on his threats sometimes. This shows that he is serious. He wants media companies to change. He wants them to report in a way he likes. He wants them to be careful with their words. The case with the BBC is one more example of this. It shows his ongoing campaign. He wants to control the news about him. He does not like it when news companies say bad things, or when they show things he does not like. He uses the law to try and stop this. His goal is to make sure news reports are what he calls fair. But many people see it as a way to pressure the media. It makes them afraid to publish certain stories or to show certain videos. This can make it hard for people to get all the news. So the BBC situation is not just one problem, it is part of a larger pattern. This pattern has been happening for a long time. It is about President Trump and the news. He often uses strong actions. He uses legal actions. He does this to change how news is made. He wants to hold news companies accountable. He says they spread lies or fake news. He believes they should pay for what he sees as wrong reporting. This is why he asks for a lot of money. This big number shows how serious he is about his claims. This approach has been consistent for many years. It is a key part of how he deals with the media. He believes that news companies often report things that are not true. He also believes they try to hurt his reputation. So he fights back with legal tools. This makes the current situation with the BBC understandable within this larger history. It is a strategy he has used many times before. 6. Other companies paid. President Trump has received money from other media companies before. This is not a new thing for him. After he came back to power, many U.S. news companies and tech companies paid money to end legal problems. They paid tens of millions of dollars. These companies often chose to pay money because they wanted to avoid long and difficult court cases. It was an easy way for them to stop the legal threats. Also, some of these companies had business that needed approval from his government. One example is Paramount. Paramount is the company that owns CBS News. In July, Paramount decided to pay $16 million. This was to settle a case that President Trump had started in Texas. He said that CBS News had edited an interview in a bad way. The interview was with Kamala Harris, who was then the vice president. President Trump claimed that the company had misled viewers with the editing. Many legal experts thought that Paramount could easily win this case. They believed the law President Trump used was not right for the situation. Also, President Trump had won the election, so it was hard to say that the interview had truly harmed him. However, Paramount's leaders saw the lawsuit as a problem they did not need. They did not want it to distract them. At that time, Paramount was also trying to get his government's permission for a big business merger. They wanted to join with another company called Skydance Media. So Paramount decided to pay the $16 million to end the legal fight. President Trump also received money from ABC last year. ABC is a news company owned by Disney. He had sued ABC because of things said by a TV anchor named George Stephanopoulos. ABC agreed to pay $15 million to settle this case. When we add up all the money President Trump has received, the amount is very large. This includes settlements from ABC, CBS, and also from cases against Meta. Meta is the company that owns Facebook. It also includes money from YouTube, which is owned by Google. In total, he has received over $80 million from these different media and tech companies. Most of this money is planned to be used for a special project. It will go towards building his presidential library, not to him personally. The current situation with the BBC has some parts that are similar to these past cases. For example, President Trump's legal team has said that the BBC's TV show was a form of election interference. This is a similar claim to the one made in the CBS case. However, the BBC is different from companies like Paramount or Disney. The BBC is not part of a large business group. It is a public organization that gets money from the public. This means it has a different structure and might face different kinds of attention. 7. A hard case to win. Winning a defamation case in the United States is very difficult. President Trump's legal team faces a big challenge if they decide to sue the BBC. They need to prove several specific things to win their claim. One of the biggest challenges is meeting the actual malice standard. This is a very high legal bar. It means President Trump's lawyers must show that the BBC knew the information they broadcast was false. Or they must prove the BBC acted with a reckless disregard for the truth. For example, lawyers would need to show BBC leaders understood their editing made President Trump appear to encourage violence inaccurately. Despite this knowledge, they still chose to air the program. This is much harder to prove than just an error, as it requires showing what someone knew or intended. There are also significant questions about where this case can happen. President Trump's legal team has suggested filing the lawsuit in Florida. However, the BBC is a public service broadcaster from the United Kingdom. Its main television channel and streaming service, where the Panorama episode was shown, are not widely available in the US. So people in Florida could not easily watch the program. Some legal experts believe this creates a jurisdictional hurdle. This means a court in Florida might have difficulty hearing a case about a UK show. It could be hard to prove that many people in Florida actually saw the program. If only a few people saw it, then it is harder to argue that the show caused widespread harm in that state. One lawyer said it would be hard to show how someone in Florida could form a negative opinion from a show they had not seen. However, President Trump's legal letter mentioned that the segment was also distributed through various digital platforms. This might suggest more people could access content online, even if main BBC channels were not available. Proving the reach and impact of this digital distribution is another task for President Trump's legal team. Additionally, the timing of the lawsuit is important. In the United Kingdom, the time limit for a defamation case has already passed. This could be why President Trump's team wants to file the case in the United States. In summary, winning against the BBC in a U.S. court requires overcoming difficult legal standards, like proving actual malice, and addressing complex questions about where the case can legally take place. These factors make it a very challenging case to win. 8. What happens next? Two important leaders at the BBC have left their jobs. These were top people in the organization. Their resignations happened because of the issues surrounding the TV show and the legal threat from President Trump. The BBC has stated that it will carefully review the letter from President Trump's legal team. They plan to respond directly to the letter in due time. This means the BBC will give its official answer to President Trump's lawyers soon, after considering all points. If President Trump decides to start a lawsuit against the BBC, it could be a difficult path for him. Some people who know a lot about law think that going to court might be very risky. A court case would bring a lot of new attention to President Trump's speech. This is the speech he gave on January 6, before the events at the U.S. Capitol building. Many people would talk about his words and actions from that day again, and this could be a problem. One expert, an international media lawyer named Mark Stevens, said that if President Trump sues, it could be like opening a Pandora's box. This old story means that once you open the box, many troubles and problems can come out unexpectedly. For President Trump, it means that every quote and statement he has made about January 6 could be discussed openly in court. These details might not be helpful for his case and could bring new questions about his past actions. Mr. Stevens also described the situation as a legal cliff edge. He said that if President Trump jumps into a lawsuit, there is a high chance he could fall. This means he could lose the case, or it could create more problems for him than he expects. A trial would make everyone look closely at his role and words on January 6. President Trump has always said he did not do anything wrong that day. However, a court would make all the facts and details public again for everyone to see. The BBC is different from other companies President Trump has sued before. It is not owned by a large corporate group or a private company. Instead, it is a public organization that gets its money from the public. This unique structure means it gets a lot of public attention and review. President Trump's legal team has said that the BBC's program was a form of election interference, trying to change how people vote. They claim President Trump will keep challenging those who spread what he calls lies or fake news. The outcome of this important situation is still unknown. It will show what happens when a powerful leader challenges a big news organization in the legal system.